That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Smile 2! The sophomore film directed by Parker Finn, which is being released courtesy of Paramount Pictures on October 18th, 2024.
Parker Finn did Smile, which we reviewed.
In 2022, yes.
And I recall really enjoying that film.
Same.
Was that Parker Finn's first film?
Correct.
Oh, wow. Well, I like the second one even better.
Where'd this person come from?
Right. What is Smile 2 about? About to embark on a world tour, global pop sensation Skye Riley begins experiencing increasingly terrifying and inexplicable events. Overwhelmed by the escalating horrors and the pressures of fame, Skye is forced to face her past. What is your pull quote?
Trauma appears to be the gift that keeps on giving in Smile 2, an unnerving, dread-inducing descent into madness played with pop prima donna aplomb by Naomi Scott as a slightly sober sufferer of a torturous entity's persecution.
Mine. Smile 2 starts off with a bang and keeps its foot on our necks for the entire running time. I thought this movie was excellent.
I did too, and because initially I was concerned because the title was just Smile 2. I wanted something more smiley.
Well, and the trailer was interesting, but I was concerned that it had taken the first one made some money, so now we're gonna throw a little pizzazz on the next one, but not have a good story. But I found this one even more riveting. Every scene was exciting to me.
Well, yes, because I think what Mr. Finn does well, as he did with Sosie Bacon in the first one, is create a character that we have kind of compassion for and care about, so that when terrible violence happens, it's affecting.
So the actor playing Skye Riley?
Naomi Scott.
Okay.
Who you know from Guy Ritchie's Aladdin. She was Jasmine.
Oh, that's right.
And she was also part of Elizabeth Banks' Charlie's Angels trio.
Oh, okay. Okay, so spoilers, obviously. So this film takes place 6 days after the events of the last one, and we know that because the opening is my friend Kyle Gallner, and we're told that it's 6 days later, and he's from the last film. And I guess something interesting this film doesn't do is it doesn't really explain the lore.
Well, it was kind of ambiguous from the first Smile, and we keep in that tradition, but not really referencing the first film too heavily either.
No, but what we know from the first film is that there's some entity perhaps that is infecting people such that if they witness like a traumatic death, now they are infected and they will then die in a week. And during that week, descend into madness. So Kyle Gallner's character in the opening of this film, 6 days later, knows that this is going to happen, and so he wants it to happen to someone bad. So he finds these two drug dealers who he knows wrongfully killed a couple or something, and he goes there and ends up killing them accidentally because he wants to die first, and then things go left and Kyle Gallner ends up getting killed. But so very exciting opening. But what's also important about that opening is that Lukas Gage, or Cage.
Gage. Playing Louis Fregoli.
Who I liked. He is this little lowly drug dealer who happens to be at that house at the wrong time and witnesses this go down. So now he's cursed. And he's important because Skye Riley, she's a pop star like Lady Gaga, and we'll get more into her backstory, but she is in pain from an accident that happened a year prior, but she won't be prescribed good pain meds because she has a history of addiction. So she's been getting Vicodin on the low from Lukas Gage. But he's been infected. So when she goes to visit him, he kills himself in front of her. So now she's infected. So the entirety of the movie is Skye Riley descending into madness. She's getting texts from an unknown caller talking about, I know what you did last summer. And of course it's freaking her out because they're referencing were you at Louis Fregoli's house? So she thinks maybe she's in trouble because when he killed himself, she surely did not call the police, and we'll explain why. But then the person says, she gets more texts and they tell her, oh, the visions you're seeing are real. So now she knows that someone knows what she's going through. She meets this person, and it's this older gentleman who's a nurse,
Morris, played by Peter Jacobson.
And this same thing happened to his brother. So he's kind of like the character from the first movie in that he's been doing research trying to figure out what's going on. And so he found Lukas Gage, went to his apartment, found his dead body, saw that the last person he was in communication with was the pop star Skye Riley.
Don't know how. Well, I guess he could open his phone with
his face. Well, his face was
destroyed,
like hamburger meat, but either way,
he got in there somehow.
He did, but he explains to Skye Riley off camera, so that's why they don't really like re-explain the lore of the first film. But now she understands what's happening, and he says, "I think we can beat this by making you die clinically and then resuscitating you. But during that interim, maybe the entity will leave your body."
Like when a wood tick is on a corpse.
So he does it in like the freezer of a Pizza Hut, like an abandoned Pizza Hut.
On Staten Island.
And that's sort of the final scene, but then we realize like a lot goes down. There's like a battle between Skye Riley and her like older self, like previous self. And then we find out that what she's seeing is like not reality. So then the real final scene of the film is Skye Riley is on stage for her like opening night of her big world tour.
Deluxe.
That's the name of the tour? Mm-hmm. Oh. And this lady kills herself on stage in front of this entire audience.
She jabs a microphone into her eye socket.
Presumably infecting the audience. The end. Man, like every scene was exciting. I really like the actor playing Skye Riley. Mm-hmm. That name, though, reminded me of that drug.
Skyrizi. I still keep thinking that.
I do too now.
For plaque psoriasis, yes.
And Crohn's disease. I know that much.
This also is seemingly a timely film for Chapel Roan.
Oh. But that actor, what's her name again?
Naomi Scott.
She did such a good job. There were levels. Mm-hmm. She really goes there.
And there's an EP that was released of this character singing. And I think 2 tracks are really good. Well, especially, I think one is excellent, but I kind of like another one too. But
her character suffers from, what is it called? Trichotillomania?
Where she pulls out her hair.
She pulls out her hair, and it's related to like PTSD because a year prior, she was in this like celebrity romance with Jack Nicholson's kid.
Ray Nicholson. Mm-hmm.
And they got into an accident after leaving like a fancy party. They were both drunk and high off coke. And in the accident, he gets killed. And she was badly injured. Mm-hmm. So we see she has scars all over. I also like that this actor, the way she's presented, her body looks, I mean, she's obviously very beautiful and fit, but she also has like a normal looking body. Mm-hmm. And then we see scars. She had a back injury, so she's in pain. But yeah, we see her pulling out her hair. And there's a lot of humor in this that I thought was really slick because in the trailer, you see Drey Barrymore. And I'm like, oh no, that lady's obnoxious. But I actually think she worked well because Skye goes on the Drey Barrymore show. And Drey Barrymore's explaining the tragic events of the year prior and how it reminded me of Gloria Estefan coming out of the dark. But so Drey Barrymore's explaining to the audience and the camera what happened to Skye Riley, like these tragic things. And the audience members are smiling. They're all like, so I thought it almost like they were making fun of how obnoxiously bubbly Drey Barrymore is.
Well, it's fitting because there's an appropriate time and appropriate things to smile at.
Right.
You know, it's like people posting tragic things on social media and it's getting likes.
And like, am I supposed to like this?
This isn't really, this doesn't quite fit.
Yeah. But so her performance is really strong. I liked, she has a best friend who she fell out with a year prior after the accident named Gemma, who's played by
Dylan Gelula,
who I really like as Xantippe from The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Yes.
But she was the perfect casting because she's how would you described her really well earlier.
I did?
Yeah.
A vapid?
No, she's
a comic foil.
Yes, because she seems to be unimpressed by her super famous friend and she's kind of over her.
Well, I think they were friends before she was famous. So
they've been friends since they were kids.
So that's why she can trust, you know, somebody at the stature where, you know, once you meet people after you're notable, you can't really trust people. So, which kind of adds to the empathy that builds for this person. Like, there's no one she can tell what she's experiencing.
Right. Well, so then her mother,
Rosemarie DeWitt, who I think is great casting here.
I thought she was really good. She's, at first you think she's like the momager from hell because she's pushing her daughter.
Dina Lohan.
But then we realized, like, you know, this mother gave up her entire life and her career to support her daughter and get her to where she is. And you can tell that the mom is frustrated with her daughter. Like, okay, you already had an issue with addiction. You almost derailed your career. You're getting a second chance. And now you're on your bullshit again.
Well, I think, yeah, the mother comes to feel very realistic. Like, these are commitments.
Yeah.
And we will be sued for lots of money if you do not attend.
Then she has an assistant, this gay guy.
Miles Gutierrez-Riley.
Who I like too.
He was funny.
Then the head of her label, who's that actor?
Raúl Castillo.
Yes, I liked him. Okay, the cinematography. The film looks really rich.
Charles Sarroff, who did Smile, also Night Swim, which isn't a film I liked at all, but you can't say it looked terrible, I guess. He also did a film, he lensed a film that we gave a really high review to called Relic, although that director did Apartment 7A, which we weren't crazy about. But yes, clearly a pretty good eye.
The score is very effective.
Cristobal Tapia de Veer, who also did White Lotus and I think both seasons of White Lotus, or including the third. Also Baby Girl, with Nicole Kidman, which I loved. You haven't seen yet.
Did you notice there was like the sound of a cracking egg throughout the film? I thought that was so interesting. You already talked about the songs, which her final performance, I really did like that song.
That was called Blood on White Satin. And it starts off, she's rehearsing right before the concert, so you're seeing all the lights in the choreography, and there's an incident where the entity interrupts everything. And I was mad at the entity. I wanted to see the rest of the performance. Like it was
good.
Got a good beat. The choreography was great.
Okay, I'm just gonna go through my notes quickly. So it's in the trailer where we see Lukas Gage take like a round weight from a weight like lifting set and hit his face. But in the film, you see it. He does it like 4 times, and you see his face start to like disintegrate. That was very effective. And then Skye panics because as she was waiting for him, because he's kind of tweaking when she gets there, he's all freaked out. He takes a sword and puts it to her neck. So she's a little freaked out by him, but she assumes that he's probably just tripping.
And she wants that Vicodin.
And she wants that Vicodin, so she's like, well, go get the shit. So while she's waiting for him for a long time, the news is on. And she sees the news is talking about her and talking about her addiction. And then the humor is so appropriately placed because we see pictures of her from when she was like an addict. And there are these candid shots that I thought were funny. But after Lukas kills himself, she's deciding whether or not to call the police. And
doesn't.
And doesn't, of course, and gets home. But I thought all of that was very tense.
Well, because it makes sense. All of it makes sense. But at the same time, what I think is so interesting about Smile and the sequel is about how when we don't process trauma, how it wreaks havoc. And she hasn't really processed what she's been through.
The year prior.
Yeah. And, you know, we all make excuses to keep doing things we do sometimes. And like the Vicodin is like, she hasn't really let go.
Well, let's keep talking about that because I think what works really well for me is a lot of times sequels to movies like this, they kind of just like repackage the first one with a little extra pizzazz because they have the money. But this one feels like if you didn't see the first one, and you didn't fully understand the whole like, because they don't really harp on like you're gonna die in a week. No one tells her that. We never hear that.
Right.
So if you went into this cold, you would think this is a movie about someone suffering from addiction, who has unprocessed trauma, who is like descending into madness.
Well, just all those great portraits of women starring fantastic actors from the 70s like Catherine Deneuve in Repulsion or Susanna York in Images, where there's this unraveling that it is very kind of difficult to watch.
I would say it's kind of on par with what's the Polanski one?
Repulsion.
Yeah. I mean, it's very effective as a psychological thriller. It's very effective as a straight up horror film.
I think this would make a fantastic double feature with Vox Lux.
Oh.
With Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
Just having sold her soul to the devil.
But what I was also going to say about the Lukas Gage scene is while she's there, Skye throws up, like she vomits. And then we see later that she's searching on her phone, does vomit have DNA?
And the answer from Google is, it depends. Which is true.
Oh my gosh. This is also in the trailer, but still very effective. Skye's doing a meet and greet. And in the trailer, you see the little creepy girl, which is creepy. But you also see this man who has like a skin condition, who's kind of like, it's kind of a red herring because you think that he's one of the possessed people, but he's just like a psycho stalker.
He does make a return, but again, like it's images in her mind. And I think you were just coming back from the bathroom.
Oh, that he's naked?
He's naked.
Yeah,
but
I saw that.
But did you see his underwear?
No.
He's got skid marks.
Oh, the attention to I think the reason I love this movie so much is it really feels like whomever wrote it, like
Parker Finn,
took the time to make sure every scene, that every moment felt like something. There's no filler.
No, and film is over. I think it's 2 hours and 7 minutes.
It did not feel.
Not
I could have watched another hour. I was really into it. Okay, I think it's so we're told by Skye, because Skye tells Gemma, who's now back as her friend, which is not necessarily true, which we'll get to, but she tells Gemma that her therapist told her whenever you feel like this is a moment where you might want to drink or do drugs, you should drink water. And the way this lady stays hydrated is so comical to me because she's drinking those bottles of like Voss water in the glass. Well, I guess they're plastic now. But anyway, those Voss bottles. And she is like downing them in one gulp.
She is going to town.
And how many times does she does that? Like 5 times?
Well, at least one of the ones she's drinking out of his glass because there's a scene where one breaks.
Oh, that's right. Okay, Ray Nicholson is his name. Mm-hmm. So
at least used effectively for once.
Yes, I was gonna say. I mean, I don't mind him. The movie we reviewed him in was not good.
Out of blue.
Something like that.
Well, it was a remake of his dad's film Postman Always Rings Twice.
But I thought in this one, because we see him like she's hallucinating in a very effective scene where he's in like the audience of a fundraiser, which we'll get to. But we get flashbacks to the accident.
And if you've ever been in a car with somebody that's clearly drank too much and is driving, or
you're arguing,
or you've had too much, it is discombobulating.
It was very effective.
Yes.
That was probably one of the most tense moments, is them driving, knowing they're drunk and they're fighting.
Well, because you already know what's going to happen, but at the same time, it's like you can see these two people just unhinged and toxic.
And we find out the car accident happened because Skye's crazy ass grabbed the steering wheel and they ran off a cliff.
And then I think it relates to the unprocessing because you know she didn't tell anybody about that part.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so part of her stressors during this week is that she is supposed to, right before her big tour starts, she's been asked by the record label executive to go to this like fundraiser for kids and give like a speech, like present someone.
For underprivileged children.
And this lady shows up and she's introduced by this older woman, maybe like in her 70s, who looks like maybe she's famous too. And then Skye gets out there. She had smeared her lipstick. She's kind of a wreck. She starts reading the teleprompter and the teleprompter stops. And this lady starts talking real crazy about like basically why being famous is awful. And then I thought that was super well written. And then she snaps out of it, but not before the older lady who announced her tries to like, you know.
She's trying to comfort her.
And Skye like knocks that lady. It's so jarring to see a woman
of that age
just be like thrown off a stage, and of course everyone's freaking out.
And then it's that later that evening where Skye Rizzi is getting all these phone calls from like CAA and like 42 West, the publicist.
She's in trouble. Oh gosh, so then Skye gets back to her, because she lives in like a fancy penthouse downtown. I think they're in New York, right?
They are.
They have to be, if it's Drey Barrymore.
They are, because Staten Island is...
Oh, duh. Anyway, there's a scene where because a lot of what she's seeing is in her head, so there's a scene where she sees all of her backup dancers like stalking her. That was giving me, for some reason, even though I haven't seen the Suspiria remake, it made me think of that.
Well, actually, the choreography of that was kind of like Gaspar Noé's Climax a little bit too.
Oh, that too, yeah.
But very good.
So they throw Skye into like a rehab center called Harvest Moon. And we're thinking, okay, well, I guess she's going to be here for a while. No, her mom's like, girl, you have one day to get right.
She's like, you're going to rest for today, and we're going to cover up that patch of hair missing on
Because she
your
has a
head.
huge patch of hair pulled out. Yeah.
But it sounds cruel, but you know, when her mom gets down to it, it's kind of like, well, we're stuck.
Right, like we will lose everything, millions of dollars. Like we will be sued, your career's over, you need to get yourself together. And that's when we see Skye kill her mother.
Violently.
Well, we see the mother kill herself.
Well, yes.
With a broken shard of a mirror, she slits her throat, gouges her own damn eye out, and then it looks like it was actually Skye doing it. And then she tries to escape Harvest Moon, and she grabs a gun, and watching Skye shoot the gun was so... I mean, it's horrific, but it was funny.
Yes, and then
Gemma shows up.
Gemma shows up with coffee, and they abscond in a vehicle that they steal.
And then we realize that
she goes, I gotta go to Staten Island. She goes, ew, why?
Well, then the biggest gag. So for like an hour of the film, Gemma's come back into Skye's life. Like she's forgiven her, and she's agreeing to go on tour with her to help her cope. And they're driving in this Escalade trying to go to Staten Island to meet up with the nurse.
Morris.
To go to Pizza Hut to clinically die.
Like flatliners.
Yes. And as they're driving, we realize that Gemma is not in the car because Skye's phone starts ringing and it's Gemma, who's supposed to be driving the Escalade. And then we hear Gemma say, sorry, I never called you back. I actually wasn't sure I wanted to, but what's up, girl? So then we see that Skye's in the car alone, and that this entire time she's been imagining her friend too.
Which that all of this feels like a really distressing and very sardonic nightmare.
Yes, it does, because the final scene in the Pizza Hut, we see the nurse, Marcus, explain to her, like, you need to be in the freezer so that your brain doesn't get damaged. In the 9 minutes you're dead, and I'm going to inject you with this thing to stop your heart, and then I'll shoot adrenaline into your heart once I'm ready to wake you up. The only part of this movie that confused me is that Marcus leaves the freezer. He's like, I'll be right back, and then he never comes back.
Because I don't think that's actually happening.
You don't think that's happening?
I don't think that's happening at that point.
So then we see Skye realize, like, he's not coming back, so she takes the drug and stabs herself in the neck with it, and then all of a sudden her previous self
she's being terrorized by her previous self, and that's when she
tries to kill herself.
Yes.
And so then we see Skye from a year ago with a different hairstyle, because in current time Skye has like a blonde, like pixie cut, but back then she was like Madonna Frozen,
which doesn't not fit her, but there are several times because of the costumes that she looked like a young Penelope Cruz playing Jerry Blank right when she dropped out of high school.
Yeah. Oh, I wrote that down. Yeah, that she did remind me of Jerry Blank sometimes with the blonde hair. Mm-hmm. But then, yeah, her previous self, like that demon spirit, is telling her, like, this is all fake. And then all of a sudden, we see Gemma rise onto the stage of the opening night of her concert. Man, this was such a fun ride.
I agree.
We saw this at a screening, but I would pay to see this again. Yeah. I had that much fun with it.
We see her in a photo shoot too that is also really striking. That was almost giving me, is it the Duran Duran music video for Chauffeur? If you recall, like I love that song and how that video looks, but there's an 80s vibe to it, which makes me really excited that, because I was suspicious about it before, but after both these films, Parker Finn bought the rights to Possession, one of my favorite films of all time.
That's right.
That with Robert Pattinson.
He's going to do a good job.
I think, well, especially, Women in Madness and how Isabella Gianni's performance. Like, he better call Margaret Qualley. But, and Sigourney Weaver would be a good Margit Carstensen. Just my 2 cents. But I think that he could really do something with it. Not that needs to be done.
I need to reference my data, but this will probably be my favorite horror film of 2024, and I think it'll definitely be my best of 2024.
Yeah, I mean, again, I like the first film. It's only been 2 years, and I think it probably was delayed a little bit because of the strikes, but based on the time frames we see on phones and such in the film. But yeah, very, very impressive. I felt at the end, because this is not a happy ending. And after we went on this journey that's, if you're with her watching this, it's very distressing. And it reminded me of how I feel when I watch Adrian Lyne's Jacob's Ladder.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
just this utter this just distress that clings to you, which is, I don't know, that I think the effect that the film is supposed to have. But yeah, and I like having that feeling. There might be people that really don't, but I think that's a sign of a very impressive storyteller.
Indeed. What would you give Smile to?
4.
I thought it was excellent. I would give it 4 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.